Stand by to initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5.
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2. 1. Mark.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mark, a.k.a. Derringer. Today is Sunday, July 9th, and you are listening to episode 113 of the Instant Action Podcast, your weekly source for Planetside 2 news and information. As always, I'm brought to you by great listeners like you via the Support the Show tab on instantactionpodcast.com. So what has been going on this past week? Well, certainly playing a lot of Planetside 2. Like I said, last week, I've pretty much gotten over that slump that I was in where I had some really bad KD, really bad score per minute, and certainly came out of that and have been playing pretty much every night. I'm also redesigning my current basement situation. Long-time listeners know that I've got a room right now in my finished basement where I do all my gaming, I do all my recording. And I'm in the process of actually moving to a different room in the basement itself, and it's kind of given me an opportunity to clear out some of the clutter that's in here and unpack some of the boxes from moving over 2 years ago that never got unpacked. So that was another reason why I was not playing as much. I was spending some time working on moving everything over. I will probably finish that move this week since I am out on vacation for the entire week. Of course, that also means I could be playing some more Planetside 2 rather than moving stuff around. That might actually happen. But yeah, again, playing the game a lot more than I was well past the funk that I was in. Once again, enjoying Planetside 2 again. So enough about me. What's actually in store for this week's show? Well, first I want to talk about UI bugs and improvements, courtesy of a plea from Wrel recently. Then I want to geek out a little bit over new Empire-specific weapons. Then I want to talk about population and the health of Planetside 2. And then I'm going to finish with a trip to Iridar's website with some API information that I'm curious about. So strap in as we hot drop into another episode of the Instant Action Podcast. First up this week, like I said, UI bugs and UI improvements. This was a plea made by Wrel on Reddit at the end of this past week, and he's really looking for top 5 of both categories, and he wrote that he'd like to ask that if you were to make a list, what would your top 5 UI bugs and top 5 UI improvements look like? He says a bug is something like hives showing up on locked continents, or the map not showing Empire region colors on off continents, or that weird purple pie chart sliver that shows up for NC when there's no VS in the region. And an improvement, not a feature, would be something like the continent locked pop-up being moved to the top of the screen instead of in the middle, or having an icon appear above allies that are using voice chat, or better sorting functionality in the marketplace. In contrast, a feature would be something like revamping the way scoreboards work, or making outfit progression trees, or adding companies for platoons. And that's not what he's looking for at this time. And he's looking for concise answers, as concise as possible. And also images if you have them. And he's streaming live right now as I'm recording this, and I mentioned in his stream that I was going to be talking about this at the beginning, and he did say that there is a small window of UI time coming up. It's not clear whether they're getting a person from H1Z1 to come over and work for a little while. He did say that they were going to be doing someone's going to be doing some freelancing work for them. Again, that doesn't mean, or we don't necessarily know if they're an H1Z1 person or somebody off the street. He did say that they also have not hired a full-time UI person yet, but they've definitely done some interviews, so hopefully we see a full-time UI person come to the Planetside 2 development team sooner rather than later. The fact that they've been doing some interviews is certainly a good first step. So, again, this is on Reddit. It's quite a long post. I'm going to include a link to it because a lot of people are making suggestions in here. Unfortunately, most of the things people are suggesting are not UI improvements or UI bugs. Complaining about performance in a UI topic really is counterproductive, yet quite a few people are complaining about performance in it. Again, you really need to understand that this is just UI stuff. Now, I compiled a small list of things that I would like to actually see, and hopefully they're all UI related. For bugs, the implant help screen is probably the one that annoys me the most right now. And if you're not aware of that one, if you're on the implant screen, you click help. It kind of mishmashes the help screen over the implant screen, and it's tough to click off of it. It's a real mess. That's probably the one that annoys me the most right now. Second on that list is seeing the words new conglomerates, Terran republics, and Vanu sovereignties. That one annoys the ever-living shit out of me. None of those names should be plural when they're mining cordium or about to lock a continent through hives or whatnot. It should just be the new conglomerate, the Terran republic, or the Vanu sovereignty. Let's drop the S from the end of all of those. That's a simple one to change, too. Please do it. Next, Daybreak cash purchase screens are bugged out. A lot of people are having trouble even purchasing through it or not getting the actual screen to pop up for them. I would think that anything surrounding purchasing Daybreak cash would be the highest on their priority list, just because that's something that, it's income for them. So I'm hoping that that's one of the top things on their UI bug screen stuff that they're going to be fixing, because I've seen countless complaints recently on Reddit where people are saying, I wanted to purchase Daybreak cash today, but I was unable to. No one should ever, in a company that's taking your money, see a screen that says we're not, or gets to a screen where they're unable to give money to the company that they're trying to give money to. Plain and simple, that's just poor business practice. That should be one of the highest priorities over at Daybreak Games, and we should never see that sort of UI bug. Next, another bug that kind of annoys me is the medic one. If you're not familiar with this one, a lot of times when a medic has been killed, they still show up as that plus symbol on your mini-map, whereas they're dead. They're not alive anymore. They should show up as a skull. That's kind of annoying. I must apologize to my squad mates every time I'm yelling at a medic near me to come and res me, just to find out that they're dead. So I'd like to see that one fixed. And finally, this one's maybe not a huge bug, but the fact that some bases still show World Domination Series information is kind of irking. I mean, it's been years since the World Domination Series even existed, and therefore I'm really surprised that even some of this stuff shows up on any bases at all. Again, the UI bug list I don't think is as big as I want it to be, or as people think it might be, because I don't think everybody understands what is a UI, a user interface bug, and what is some sort of bug within the game itself. I'm hoping, or not necessarily hoping, I know Wrel said that he got a lot of good feedback from this post already. There's still time to go and add your bugs to it as well. Ultimately, it sounds like they're going to get, about 100 different ideas on the table and only be able to fix about 10 of them. So if there is a UI bug that's really screwing with you or messing you, one that you really want fixed, it's worth your time to get in there and make that comment. Now, moving on to UI improvements, one that I would really like to be able to see is the ability to turn off player names within the game itself. I think just seeing a Dorito, enemy Dorito, the enemy triangle above a player's head is good enough. I don't necessarily always need to see players' names, and there's certainly times when a lot of players all at once that are all spotted are certainly cluttering up my screen, when really I just need to start focusing on the player and the body and the head rather than getting distracted by the name and seeing what outfit they're in or things like that, especially the super long names. Like I said, that one's kind of an annoying thing for me, and I'd like to be able to turn that on or off at my discretion. Compounding on that improvement, I mean, I could talk about HUD element placement, till the end of the days. I would love to be able to move all the elements of my heads-up display anywhere that I want on the screen. Like, say I want to drop everything in the lower right-hand corner of my screen so I get a much wider field of view or things like that. So in addition to being able to toggle on and off player names, I'd love to be able to either move or eliminate some of my HUD elements from showing up on the screen. Next, one that I think would be very beneficial to new players as well as existing players, I'd like to see on the mini-map lines between teleporters and jump pads that show you, if you take a certain teleporter, where you're going to end up. I know for me, a lot of the satellite bases to biolabs in particular, I'm not quite sure where, if I step in the teleporter in the spawn room, I'm going to end up, because sometimes the biolabs teleporter and where the spawn room teleporter is going to exit you are in different places, and sometimes I'm not quite sure where those are. So having direct lines between those teleporters showing me that if I step here, I'm going to end up there would be good. And like I said, really good for new players. Same thing with jump pads. I'd like to see sort of like maybe not a direct line, but kind of like an arc line between the location of the jump pad and the exit of the jump pad. Again, kind of give people an idea where those are going to end up. Again, this is a Biolab 1 where you run to a jump pad and you're not sure which base exactly it's going to send you to, or you're not sure which side of the biolab you need to run to get to a particular base. I think adding those sorts of lines between teleporters and jump pads would be really beneficial for new players and, like I said, players like me who sometimes forget. Next, squad leader tools. I mean, I could talk on and on about squad leader tools, how I think there's so many different ways we could make squad leading easier or better, make it easier to give stuff to people, give squad lead to certain people, give platoon lead to certain people. There are many squad leader tool suggestions out there, so I'm not going to drill through all of those. And the last improvement, and this one could kind of be both an improvement and a bug, would be separating out directives for each character. Now, for those who know me, I play all three factions on Emerald. I play with Joke on TR, I play with Joku on VS, and I play with Bax on NC. And we play a different faction every night, it feels like. Granted, this past week we've been playing an awful lot of VS, but on any given day, I could be playing any faction. And I'll go in and, for example, on my NC character, I'm tracking bandit kills right now. Whereas when I go over to my Vano Sovereignty character, I want to see how I'm doing on my heavy assault directive. When I go to my Terran Republic, I want to see how I'm doing on my light assault directives. So right now, when I switch from character to character, all my directives get cleared, and I don't get to actually see what I was working on for a particular character on a particular faction. So I would love to see those separated out, and me able to not have to continuously spend a few seconds of my time going in and reselecting the directives that I want to view based on the character that I'm logged in as. Now, again, these are just some things that I think of or things that I would like to see changed. Certainly the thread on Reddit has a lot more improvements than even I could mention within this. But like I said, Wrel wanted to know 5. So I've given 5 of each of them. And I highly recommend anybody who's got a nagging UI issue to get into this thread and make your voice heard, and maybe it'll get on the list and maybe it'll get fixed. But to also realize that we could be going at a pool of 100 plus UI things that they're looking at that need to be whittled down to what Daybreak Games feels are the 10 most pressing or 10 best that need to be fixed based on a small window of time for the UI programmer that they will have on staff for a little while. Again, this is a good chance for players to put feedback in front of the developers so we can get a better game moving forward. Topic number 2 this week is Empire-specific weapons. Now, Wrel did a live stream last week, and in it he mentioned briefly, and this was not a live stream, I'm sorry, he was just doing a PTS overview, and during it he mentioned again that Empire-specific weapons are in the works, and while he can't talk specifically about the details, we do know that they will be infantry weapons, and this excites me because if you all remember back on the episode that I had Wrel on back in the beginning of January, if you're curious for that, it is episode 86. He did say, again, or he did mention, and he did get my hopes up about a potential Derringer pistol coming to the game. And when he talked about that Derringer pistol, he'd mentioned specifically that they had a model of a new conglomerate type pistol that they were thinking about using for it. And that makes me wonder, once again, if maybe New Conglomerate are going to get a Derringer pistol. And if that's the case, I would be super excited about potentially having a pistol named after me in the game. Now, let's take that with the grain of salt that it is, though, because it does say Empire-specific weapons. It does not say Empire-specific pistols. I mean, we all know we already have a bunch of Empire-specific pistols that were added to the game after launch initially. So we could not be looking at pistols at all. We could be looking at, light machine guns or carbines or who knows. Like I said, I'm just kind of hoping that potentially, since he's teased in the past that there is this model that they've never shown anybody out there, that it's quite possible that it could be coming to the game itself. Now, I've mentioned in the past where I got the name Derringer from, but just to reiterate, when I was in high school, I played paintball a ton, and there was an old pump gun, because I'm talking 1989 is when I started playing paintball. There was a pump gun called the Derringer Mach 2. It was not a pistol. It was a regular size paintball gun, and at that time I was heavy into bulletin boards, and that's online chatting messages back in the late 80s for all you youngsters. I took Derringer as my handle on those bulletin boards, and I've been Derringer ever since. So just because the name Derringer is equated with a small two-shot pistol or a small concealable pistol, again, there is a precedent set for the name being used on other types of guns, especially paintball guns in this particular case. So maybe it's not even going to be a pistol that's going to be in the game. It could be something completely different. It's been a while since we've seen Empire-specific weapons. As we know, they've been really pushing hard this NSX line, and as we know, they're still not even done with the NSX line. There's still a sniper rifle that potentially could be coming down the pipeline. There's still a pistol that could be coming down the pipeline for NSX weapons, so who knows how much further out Empire-specific weapons even are. But just the fact that it's been mentioned, and the fact that I know there is a NC model out there that they have not used yet, kind of gets my hopes up. So I'm just going to leave that as it is in the air and hope that maybe that's what Wrel could be teasing. Because, again, that would be one of the most exciting days in my life. I'll probably rank it behind my daughter being born and getting married, but it's got to be pretty up there. Next up this week, I want to talk about Planetside 2's population. If any of you troll Reddit like I do, you know that quite a few posts this week have been popping up showing a decline of player base since the most recent patch, which got new implants and stuff like that. And I want to kind of dispel that as the potential reason that we're seeing such a dip in players. And every post that I've seen kind of does 2014 to present. So, I mean, there's certainly a pretty long time period, and we're talking 3 years, 2.5 years, whatever, of data that people are quoting. And we see the normal ups and downs of a game, but over that time frame, I want to say that while Planetside 2 has a decline, it's an extremely slow decline. I can think of other games like The Division or For Honor, which were hugely hyped games, and I think the fallout for those, or the fall off, not the fallout, was much greater than Planetside 2's has ever been. I think the populations, even though they might be a little lower right now, are pretty stable, and I'm still not having any trouble finding fights. Granted, I may have to switch factions and go play on a different faction for the night, but I'm still finding those different fights. But the important thing I want to point out to everybody who's saying that this last patch is killing Planetside 2, I think that we're probably talking more of a summer or a natural summer decline, and not so much a actual decline in population based off of a patch. And anybody who's jumping around or complaining that this is really what's happening, I think it really is a sort of summer fall off. Because, I mean, let's be honest, summertime, you're spending a lot more time outdoors, you're doing more stuff, you're going on vacation. So certainly there is going to be a drop off of players as you're not trapped indoors like during winter, like most of us in the United States. So while I don't think that Planetside 2 is the healthiest game out there at this point, I certainly do not subscribe to the talk that people are saying that Planetside 2 is dying, and here's the reason why it's dying, because a patch just hit the game, and that's that. So again, to all the people out there saying, look at what's happening, this last patch is so garbage that everybody's leaving the game, and Planetside 2 is dying, I think that we're still in just this natural slow decline of Planetside 2. And I mean, if anything, it's a surprisingly slow decline. I mean, if you look at all the milestones that people are talking about, like SOE being sold and changing its name to Daybreak Games, or Smedley leaving, things like that. When you look at things like that, even those declines aren't huge, and a lot of them seem to bounce back after that happened. Again, don't base what your perception of Planetside 2 being alive or dead simply on population balances. It also has to do with what types of fights you're able to get in game itself. Again, I'm not having any trouble for most nights finding fights during prime time. So I can't agree with the people that say Planetside 2 is a dead game. Is it a dying game? Yes, every game is a dying game after it is launched. Everything steadily declines. I can't think of any games out there that have reached a peak and then exceeded that peak. World of Warcraft is a great example. It has highs and lows, highs and lows, highs and lows constantly as new new things are released or removed from the game itself. So, again, I just can't agree with everyone who's saying Planetside 2 is dying. And like I said, there seems to be quite a lot of posts about it this past week. Again, I think it's a lot of the summer decline, and let's see how we do again when we turn around into the fall itself. Finally, this week, I want to bring everyone back to Iridar's website. It's iridar.net. If you're curious, iridar.net. He had a recent post about how to use Daybreak Games' Census API. I am extremely interested in the Census API. Unfortunately, my programming skills are less than nil. I had a little bit of a programming background in high school. I did a lot of programming in BASIC, unfortunately, because that's what we were using back then. And then I went to college originally as a computer science major. Unfortunately, I started learning Pascal and things like that, and it just didn't work for me. I had trouble getting my head around it all and fell behind, and ultimately dropped my computer science major and instead earned a degree in history from college, and am now doing nothing in the field of history. But again, things like the API really interest me. So if you, like me, are interested in the Census API and how to pull stuff out, how to use it to display things that you're looking for, to help you create websites or things like that, Iridar has a pretty good guide on how to use it, some pre-made queries, how to do some basic queries and some specific examples, how to query multiple entries, how to query specific entries, how to choose what language it displays in, how to join collections, how to use multi-join and multi-level joins. It's really well written and a lot of good information in here. I've been pouring through this over the past few days, wondering how I can leverage this for myself. Unfortunately, I don't know any easy ways to leverage this for myself, so I will probably just continue to look at it longingly and wish that there was something that I could do more using the API. I'm really interested in it, but unfortunately don't have much to output it to. However, I'm sure that there are a few listeners out there who want to know more about the API and how to use the API. I will include a link to Iridar's website in this week's show notes. Feel free to go over and check it out. I'm a huge fan of Iridar's stuff. So anytime one of his things come out, I try to steer as many people over to it as I can, because they're written well with a lot of good information. Again, I wish there was more that I could use with the API stuff to, kind of make my own websites and stuff, but I'm just kind of lurk on his page and learn more about it before I take any steps forward. So with that, again, I'll include a link for anybody who's curious, but let's move on to housekeeping this week.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
Come back later, please.
Housekeeping.
Not now.
Housekeeping.
Go away.
I coming anyway?
So I did get another email this week, and it came from Pipeline Audio again. More Sunday hijinks, and he hopes that I'm not getting sick of seeing them. Pipeline Audio, I am not sick of seeing them. Please send over as many as you feel like. This week's video shows a Sunder on top of a turret tower. I'm curious on how that one was done. I'll include a link for everybody to check this one out. I love the Sunder Hijinks Pipeline Audio and never stop sending them to me. All right, that's going to be it for this week's show, but how can you get in touch with me of the show? As always, visit my website, www.instantactionpodcast.com. Send me an email like Pipeline Audio did, instantactionshow@gmail.com. You can always call me and leave me a voicemail. The number's 347-486-4772 or 347-4VM4PS2. My show's Twitter account is @InstActPodcast, and my personal Twitter is @TheDerringer. So in closing, if you've enjoyed the show, Please leave me a review on your podcast listening avenue of choice, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere else. Also, feel free to tell your friends and outfit mates about the show. And finally, thanks for listening, and keep spamming that Join Combat, formerly known as Instant Action button.